you understand what money personality you have, then I want you to think about that disempowering belief that you have, like I'm going to lose what I have, or I have to prove I can do it, I'm all alone type of thing. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, say it out loud, and then see where it is in your body. And once you identify where it is in your body, then all you have to do is you have to do breath work. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And breathe in, out through your mouth. And do this over and over. And what's going to happen is that feeling, that emotional pain that's there, it's either going to move up out of your head, or it'll move out of through all your chakras, down through your feet, into the ground.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Smart Women Talk. I'm Colleen Kilpatrick, guest host, and the reason I'm here guest hosting and subbing for Katana is because today I want to interview her. I want to hear what she has to say about the biggest mistakes women make when it comes to money. So have you ever heard the saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything? Some say it's an old Chinese proverb. Other people attribute that saying to Martha Beck. But here's what it means. If your closets and your calendar are pretty organized, then your finances are probably pretty organized too. And in reverse, if you procrastinate on dental appointments or getting your oil changed, you probably procrastinate on dealing with financial issues too. Today, we're going to figure out why. We're going to figure out some of the biggest mistakes women make that keep them from having money, keep them from wealth. Thank you for having me on the show last month, Katana. We had a great time talking about tolerations. And this month, we're going to turn the tables and we're going to talk about financial things because you're the expert. So let's dig in. When I first met you, it was at a women's gathering and you told your story, a childhood that was very challenging, and then how you eventually came through to create a really wonderful life. Can you share that for us?
Thanks, Colleen, for doing this. I've been chomping at the bit to come and share this information. And it was funny because you said, let's switch roles. And I'm so glad that we're doing that today. But yeah, I did have a really challenging childhood. And the biggest thing is that when I was 6 years old, my father died. And I just got goosebumps thinking about that. And my mother was left with 3 kids. He was in the military, so she received veterans benefits and Social Security, and she drove the school bus for our school. She used the insurance money. She paid cash for a house. So we really were doing just fine. But she wanted someone to take over, to take care of her. And it was back in the early 70s. And so she married someone from our church. But he ended up being a monster. And so after 9 years of domestic violence and truly financial abuse, terrible financial abuse, she ended up homeless with breast cancer. So you think I would have learned, because right after this happened, I was just 19, I married my own monster, and a very similar story. And no kids or anything, because I got out of it in 9 months. But you think I would have learned, but the lesson here is that we often go back to the familiar. Have you heard that before?
Absolutely, we do. It's what we know.
That experience, it created a foundation for me. And the other thing was to never be a victim again myself, but also to help other women, empower them. And I was just young. I didn't know I was going to end up doing what I'm doing. I built a very successful financial planning practice. And then at age 47, I launched Smart Women's Empowerment. And it was to help women advocate for their health, their wealth, and their happiness, so they could have wonderful lives. There's a quote I want to share with you by Anne Bancroft. It's, "The things we overcome in life really become our strengths."
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that
Very
right?
true. Yeah, absolutely true. I know that in the process of starting the organization, you reached out to women in a survey to find out what some of their biggest concerns or issues or fears were. And I think the results of that were pretty illuminating to you. And I know they were to me. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned in that survey?
Absolutely. Yeah, we ended up having 237 women fill out the survey. And the question was, what is the single biggest challenge holding you back from living your perfect life? Just one question. And the number one issue was money, but it was followed by confidence and clarity. So the women want help with money, but they don't really know where to start and they don't know where to go or who to go to. So then a few years later, there was a study by Fidelity called the FIT study. And so two things there stood out to me. Half of the women who had a financial account somewhere in an investment firm had not even met with their advisor. And then 80% of the women said that they don't even talk to friends and family because it's too personal to talk about finances. That's why our programs are great, because who are you going to talk to? If you're not talking to your advisor or family and friends, who are you going to talk to? So this is one of the things I notice. I teach a course at the women's shelter, and I teach financial literacy there, as we get that conversation going. I was asking the women, what do you do with money when you get it? And everyone said, I get rid of it. I get rid of it. And I said, why do you get rid of it? They associated pain. Every one of them associated pain with money, because when there's domestic violence, there's financial abuse. I understand this. I experienced it. I saw my mom experience it. And so it is so important for us to have these conversations. And that's why I'm so thrilled that we have this program called Smart Women's Empowerment.
Yeah, thank goodness for you. I remember the first conversation you and I had on the phone after I had seen you at that event. You helped me understand my money personality. And like you just said, often money is a taboo topic. We're brought up to believe you shouldn't talk about it. You shouldn't bring those things up. And that conversation with you that I had was really the first time that I looked at an event from my childhood, my first money memory, and identified it with some of my habits that I have to this day around money. Can you talk a little bit about that, about helping women identify their money personality and how it's been so instrumental in helping them as adults do money differently?
This idea of money personality, it really comes from the study that Bruce Lipton did in his book, The Biology of Belief. I really think this is the underlying core. He says that before age 7, children are in a hypnagogic state where they are recording everything they see, feel, hear, and are told. Imagine that. And without discerning whether it's true or not. After 7, they can start discerning. But so what happens when they witness horrible things or they're told? All of these things that they're experiencing they're being stored in their body. So things like money doesn't grow on trees, right? Rich people are bad. They're seeing things and here we can't afford it, right? Even if the parents can afford it, but they're learning scarcity and poverty. So what ends up happening is then when we're older, something happens and we get triggered and that disempowering belief pops up. And this 5-year-old is now running the show. This happens with all of us. It happens with me. It still happens with you. I know this. And so that event, that experience, those beliefs, they become our story and they become our money personality. And it's why women, they undercharge, they overgive, they undervalue themselves. And again, we talked about this before. It comes from being told, wait until you're asked. Don't ask the boy, you have to be invited, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not good enough or you're not smart enough. And think about that. Men go in for a job interview and they think they're worth way more than they are. Women, so that could be a trigger, right? So what were you thinking of the pay? Like they're going to ask you how much you want to be paid. The men are going to do much higher. The women will do something much lower. All of this comes to those 5 money personalities. So I want you, as I go through these, if one resonates, I want you to maybe put a check mark if you hear something. And then there's 5. So whichever one stands out, I'll show you what to do with it. They're love, security, value, status, and recognition. Let's start with love. Love has no connection to money, almost like it's monopoly money, magical. Money comes and money just, the debt goes away. So they show love by buying things. They don't think of the consequences and they could create debt because of it. They tend to ignore the bank balance or statements or credit cards, and then they hide their hurt feelings by not speaking up. So that's the love personality, and they're trying to fill a hole in their heart. Security. The security desires freedom, but then their challenge is trust. Their disempowering belief is, I never know when what I have, whether it's love, relationships, money, a job, when it's going to disappear or be taken from me. So they overthink purchases, they micromanage money, they live frugally, self-denial. It's almost like living, minimizing their living expenses. They may undercharge because something's better than nothing. They do everything themselves because they don't delegate. They might be a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Now, remember, these are just some of the ways these things show up, but all of these personalities have very positive things too, because these can all be turned around. Okay, but these are some of the ones that zap our power. Okay, value. So they desire significance, but then the challenge is boundaries, because their belief is, I need to prove I'm good enough or a good person. So what happens? They're often taken advantage of. They give to the point of resentment. They overextend their time, always in a state of overwhelm, not saving enough for emergencies, and creating debt as a result of things just happened to me. Okay, so you see there's no control there. Then we have status. Status is interesting because with the status personality, they desire to be validated. And then their challenge is balance. They're like go all the time. And so they're compulsively spending. They pick up the tab. Even if they're in debt, they buy expensive items like maybe designer items, but regardless of the bank balance, it's just like they feel like they need to have the best or they always want more. And they do things in extreme. Then there's recognition. And with the recognition personality, they desire respect, and their challenge is realism. So their belief is, I need to prove I can do it or prove that I'm right. So they're the risk taker, the pie in the sky ideas. They often are taken advantage of because they give people multiple chances, even when they've already proven themselves unworthy. They go against the general public thinking they know better. They often are looking for the big win. They don't like to admit they're wrong. And their debt comes from pie in the sky ideas quite often, things that don't pay off. They could be a lot of these entrepreneurs.
Wow, so interesting, because as you're describing these people,
Mhm.
of course, I and probably all of our listeners are thinking of people we know and loved ones and family members who fit these categories. And it really helps us understand why they pick up the tab when we know they have massive debt, or why they're buying the sports car or whatever. It helps us understand them a little better and maybe have a little more compassion for them too, especially if this is coming from a childhood trauma of some sort.
All of these stem from these experiences we have. And what I want to share, that the first thing is to identify which of those do you resonate with. I'm a recognition personality, and my husband's security. So you can imagine, I come up with this great pie in the sky idea. He goes into total freak out, right? Because
Right.
he's like, oh my God, shut her down.
Mhm.
And then I get upset that he's not, willing to even listen to my idea. When we realized, because I started doing this work and I'm like, oh my God, we're perfect for each other. And so now the fear is gone. We actually laugh about it. But we're able to communicate and make really smart decisions this way. So think of your partner in business, a partner in a relationship, even girlfriends or mother and daughter, or you and your daughter. So all of this is just so important to understand.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about relationships. I am security personality. I admit I'm definitely that. And I was with somebody who's a status personality. So he always wanted to buy and do big things. Everything was going to be big. And he was seeking validation, right? He wanted to be validated.
Yeah.
And here I am, the security personality, not wanting to spend like that, like wanting to do things within my budget. That's not how he rolled at all. He didn't like that I saved money at all. That was a challenge.
So what ended up happening? You had to break up?
We did. Up for other reasons, but that was a big one. That was a big
Right.
part of it because he was vivant. He just lived big. And I think he liked to be recognized for or validated for living like that, like for
Right.
buying people. Yeah.
If we think back to why this happened, the recognition person is normally someone that had something so horrible happen to them when they were little that they feel like they're a loner and they're all by themselves and they're this lone ranger out there. I'm going to prove to you and I'm going to do it. And that's why they're the risk taker. There's a pain associated. I can feel it in my heart. There's a pain associated with each of these.
Mhm.
And the love personality trying to fill that hole in her heart. What I want you to do, if you think you know what your money personality is, go down to the comments and tell us what your money personality is in the comments, because we'll go back and look later and we can comment back to you. We'd love to hear what you think your money personality is. Let me tell you what to do with it though. Once you understand what money personality you have, then I want you to think about that disempowering belief that you have, like I'm going to lose what I have, or I have to prove I can do it. I'm all alone type of thing. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, say it out loud, and then see where it is in your body. And once you identify where it is in your body, then all you have to do is you have to do breath work in through your nose, out through your mouth, and breathe in, out through your mouth, and do this over and over. And what's going to happen is that feeling, that emotional pain that's there, it's either going to move up out of your head or it'll move out of through all your chakras, down through your feet into the ground. I've done this hundreds of times. It's worked every single time. And it's like magic. And so there's a lot more to it when you work with me one-on-one. I help them figure out the source. So there's something else to it, but they can just get rid of it and it will be gone forever. If it goes out through the top of the head, it's anger normally. If it goes out through the feet, it's resentment or regret.
Fascinating. I remember you doing this with me, and it's amazing how our breath gets stuck. There's a lot of talk right now about breath work, but it's those early events, and we say trauma, like mine was trauma with a little t, it wasn't a big T trauma, but it still gets stuck in us because we interpret it as a child would, not with the wisdom of an adult. And so our breath gets stuck there. That's a very powerful technique. I hope
Yeah.
everybody tries it.
Yeah. So just pause. And then this is something Barbara Hewson, who also known as Barbara Stanny, she did, is she says the little voice pops up. She says, just look at the voice and say, thank you for sharing. I'm a big girl now. I can handle this. But I appreciate you sharing because it is part of you.
I love that.
Yes.
To give that a voice. Yeah. And to talk.
Acknowledge yourself. Yes.
Mhm.
I know that you have to prove you're right here, but it's okay. You don't have to anymore.
Right.
You're safe. You're fine. You don't have to prove anything. And it just takes away all that pain and that pressure. So once we understand our money personality, then we create new empowering beliefs and new empowering actions. Like for the security, there's always more where that came from. How does that feel?
That feels good. I
I
like
know. That's your empowering statement.
that. I love that. I'll remember that. I will put that down.
Okay.
Sounds good. What are some of the biggest mistakes that women make around money? And especially if they're recognizing their personality in this exercise you just did. Well, what are some of the mistakes they would make?
Okay. The biggest mistake is ignoring money or avoiding it because money wants you to pay attention to it.
Mhm.
And when we just ignore it, bad things happen. Part of that could be not opening up statements. I want to talk about that because that's a big issue, just letting them pile up. But another thing is just letting someone else have control of your money. It may be that you just let your spouse do the taxes and you never even look at them. You just sign. I've heard a lot of horror stories about that one. Like my mom, she turned over her house that was paid for with her husband's life insurance and all her money over to my stepfather. And he ended up selling it and taking the money and leaving her with a rented property, no equity. And she ended up no income. She became homeless. There are all these stories that I've seen of horrible things happening to people because they give up their power with money. So you want to pay attention to it. So don't avoid your money. The second one is just as bad. It's procrastinating. All of us are busy. It's so easy to put off the money issues until they become urgent. The problem is if we don't do it planfully, then we wait for a triggering event. The triggering event happens, and now you're dealing with urgent and you're scrambling. And so, an example, you finally go to the financial planner and you find out there's no way you're going to be able to retire when you wanted to. Whereas if you had gone 10 years earlier, you could have made a little change. Maybe you sold when the market crashed and you never got out of money market. And so now the market's up 1,000% and you've made 10%. And you didn't realize. You thought you were fine. Another one would be that you retire and you have all this money, and we have another 2008 and the market crashes 50%. And you thought you were diversified, but you were diversified in a bunch of mutual funds that were all invested in the same primary 30% of those monies were invested in technology stocks. And you're thinking you're diversified, but you didn't have true diversification. Another one would be you get a call that your parents or your mother is in the hospital and she's going to need caregiving. She can no longer take care of herself. And you think, oh my gosh, am I going to have to quit my job? We've never talked about this. I don't know how much she has. Does she even have a will? That kind of thing. So with planning, if you do the planning in advance, you do it when options are affordable and you have more options. Does that make sense?
Absolute sense. Absolute sense. Yeah.
So that's the procrastinating. And the last one, it's huge. It's affecting so many people in the country. Number 3 is getting yourself in too much debt. Debt can be a great thing. You can use it wisely. But when you get over your head in debt and you're not paying off your bills monthly, you're using it to have a more extravagant lifestyle, buying crap you don't need. Tracy McCubbin and I talked about that last month, is we just buy. And for some reason, we feel like we need all this stuff.
Absolutely.
But that's the problem with the debt, is it ruins everything else in our life, because until you get out of debt, you can't have financial freedom and wealth.
Because it's always hanging over your head and you never can get ahead. Like you said, you're thinking about it all the time. And unfortunately, some people are getting into debt out of necessity. They're on pharmaceuticals or whatever that they can't afford, and they're going into debt for those reasons.
But Colleen, even groceries now.
Even groceries, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you put on your charge card and you're paying for groceries and the prices have gone up, and gas has gone up, like a lot of things. So a lot of people are going to debt out of necessity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some tips? This is a lot. This is heavy stuff, like procrastination, disorganization, going into debt. What are some tips that you have for people to face their finances and do something about it?
You have to take charge of your money. It sounds so simple. And I would just start with get out a piece of paper and write a list of what's keeping you up at night. Maybe you already know. It's like the elephant in the room. It could be debt or something like that. But make a list of the things that are keeping you up at night. Figure out what is the number one thing and then take action on it. So if it's debt, let's talk about that. What can you do? Go to someone wiser than you. Get advice from them. See what they suggest. A parent, an uncle, a CPA, a financial advisor. You can go to debt counseling. They have nonprofits that can work with you to help you restructure. You need to open those statements and see where's the money going as well. And call your bank.
I think a lot of times if you're in a debt situation, there's a lot of fear that comes up in talking to these institutions, like they're the big bad guys. And in fact, they're individuals who you're going to talk to is just individuals who have been trained to help the customer. And so if you call them, I have found if you call them and just tell them what the situation is and what you would like, usually they're so agreeable to trying to help you if they can in any way. I went to a financial seminar years ago. It was a real estate investing seminar. And the instructor said, get in the habit of calling your financial institutions. And he had us on the break call them to increase our credit limit and to decrease our interest. And he said, you should be doing this on a regular basis. So ever since then, it's probably been 15 years, at the beginning of every year, and I just did it last week, I always call the institutions that I am working with, even if I don't have a balance, and I don't on my credit cards, thank God, but I still call and say, what's my credit limit? Please increase it. Please decrease any interest should I have a debt. And last week they reduced it by 8%. And she also gave me a retention bonus. So they
reduced it to 8%?
by 8%. So again,
You're kidding.
I'm not carrying a balance, but it went from 29% interest to 21% interest, which if you're carrying a balance is significant. Those numbers are very high. Those percentages are very high. But she also said, oh, you are entitled to a retention bonus of $175 because you didn't close your account. So my point is to call them and ask for them to lower the rate, ask if there are any programs that they have. If your debt is serious, tell them you are intent on paying it off, but you need some help. That's one thing to do. Not be afraid of them.
I think that's just great advice. And of course, going to a financial advisor is a great solution, but not everybody feels they can do that. But even if you have a 401k, call there and ask, how do I invest this money? Get some advice. Colleen, what I suggest is that people come to our website and they go to joinsmartwomen.com. And if they do that, they can get my ebook where I go into more detail on all of this, including steps you can take. And I go into all the money personalities in depth. And if they go, they can put name and email. Up comes a thank you page. There's a little box. You just click on it. You download the ebook just like that. You'll get invited to all our free events this way. That's what I think is the greatest thing to do. Take some action that way. Just reading a book can make a huge difference. I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and it changed my life. So
yeah, absolutely. That book too, this one that they can download, is a powerful book because it describes 5 money mistakes. And even though it's a little painful when you recognize yourself in them, it gives you something to recognize and now take action on. But the explanation of the money personalities is fabulous. That was very eye-opening to me. So
yeah,
definitely a great book.
Great.
That wraps up our show. But Katana, is there anything else you would like to say before we part ways? Any final comments?
No, I just am so thrilled. I finally got a chance to come do this. It's been a lot of fun, Colleen. Thanks for having me on
Oh,
the show.
you're so welcome on your own show. I love that. It's been a pleasure for me too. Thank you for asking. Thank you all for being here. Until the next show, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity.